Start a pot. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Raging Atheist. I'm your boy Nakasuchi, and we have the Messenger reveals. Richard is back, and we're gonna have a good talk. Um, we're gonna start off with what happened last weekend, and then we're gonna try to move on to stuff that we've wanted to talk about for a while. So, real quick, I think I'm gonna go and start making a pot of coffee real quick. So we'll let Messenger revealed, and then Richard can reintroduce himself as well. Talk about your channels and what you're doing on your channels, and then it should only take me a minute, and I'll be back as it's brewing.
Sounds good.
Should have done this like before I went on air.
First off, I'll thank Nakasuchi for having me on his channel again. I do appreciate the just the good nature that he is in terms of hearing me out, even though he's in disagreement with my theistic beliefs. He's an open-minded individual. I think that's awesome. He has a sense of humility about him. I think that's awesome and should be commended. And that's something that people should look to emulate themselves or figure out how he does. My name is John. I run a channel called The Messenger Reveals. I help people out with both behavioral issues as well as help them understand the God that I serve, the God that Jesus served, in a way that modern day mainstream Christianity doesn't do. I think that's one of the reasons that Nakasuchi is more tolerable with my theistic beliefs, is because I don't cram God down people's throats in the way that mainstream modern day Christianity does. I have a very different view of who Jesus was. I have a very different view of who the original apostles were and the disciples that came after them. I believe that the big gospel in today's church is very different than the gospel that Jesus taught. And I think that's one of the reasons why mainstream modern day Christianity is so dangerous in some of the ways that he is. And I'm more of an opponent of mainstream modern day Christianity than I am a supporter of it, though I do support a theistic view of God existing as our creator and Jesus, who is the firstborn son of God.
Awesome,
so that was just an introduction.
Yeah, I caught the very end of it, and I like that's one of the things I really like about you is you are one of the people that I talk about. Like, Christians should call other Christians out and hold them to account, and you do that a lot, and that's one of the things I appreciate about you. Welcome back, Richard. You're here to join in this conversation. It should be a pretty good conversation.
Hey, peace and blessings to all. I want you all to know that I love you very much, and I know someday we're all going to be friends. John, I don't think you actually said the name of your channel. Would you say that, please?
It's The Messenger Reveals. So if people click on my name and go to channel, they'll see the content that I do there for.
I'll get your link in the description below too. I forgot to do that when I made this one, so okay. I got to do that, but I'll put that down there tonight. I recommend you guys go and check out their channels. Oh, Martha, you were able to make it. I didn't think she was going to be able to make it. So yeah, we'll let Martha come in because I know she wanted to be a part of this. And then we're going to have us a conversation. We're going to start out with the PTSD thing. I'm aware now that Atheist Rationale wants to talk with Messenger, so I think we'll maybe allow that to happen. We'll try to work it out and make it happen this week to where maybe you and Atheist Rationale can come on and talk.
Absolutely.
Let me send her a link real quick. All right, I sent the link, Martha. All right, so yeah, we'll start with that because it was a very interesting conversation that I did not really partake in. For one, it was way above my head, and I felt like you and Shannon Q were combating each other rather well, and it got heated between you and my friend Atheist Rationale and Dragnot. And I pointed out in my introduction when I mirrored it my problems, and that's basically like just how I am as a person. I want to see evidence, I want to see proof of claims, and that's pretty much my beef. I did mention that I thought you was a little defensive, especially towards Shannon Q.
Oh, you're talking about your response video that you did, or your response introduction, I should say.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that you disagreed with, and so I wanted to explain what I meant by defensive. Like, it did seem like you was going towards their education as a way of attacking him, trying to get him off balance a little bit, and that's just kind of what I picked on. So I might have used the wrong wording when I said defensive. It was more of just like a line of attack that seemed. Sorry, I'm reading Atheist Rationale, but I just kind of wanted, like, I felt like maybe you had beef with Shannon leading up to it, and finally kind of almost just had your shot at her, so you took some shots, So that's pretty much what I was gonna start off with. Is like, what do you think about Shannon Q and so forth? If I could think,
I'll go into the history of it first. The history with the whole PTSD conversation happened in a live stream that Suros was running during the day. I was at work. I was on my phone, so I was not even on a keyboard where I could type. So I was just typing with my thumbs while I'm at work, trying to work on reports, listen to what they're saying, kind of reading the side chat a little bit. And they were talking about things in a way that I see as a victim mentality. And I don't mean that they're not victimized or that they haven't been abused or neglected. I mean that they're looking at the situation as, I'm always going to be this way. I'm always going to suffer from these things. And so I was attempting, when I did, to try to offer some level of hope. Listen, it doesn't have to be that way. These things can be healed. These things can be cured. And when I said that in regard to PTSD, people, had a lot of difficulty dealing with those things. When I, again, tried to substantiate, I'm like, listen, you guys aren't understanding, because people are saying, oh, he's proselytizing. He's basically trying to get us to sit there and follow his viewpoint and wanting to follow God, and, God will heal everything magically. And it was never anything I said. It was just presumptions they were making. And then I believe it was not Aaron, but is it Raz, Cyrus's other girlfriend?
I think Raz is his girlfriend, yeah. And then
so Raz came on and had made a comment, because Aaron was saying that she wanted to have a conversation and chew me out and lecture me and tell me how I'm completely wrong about PTSD and I don't know what I'm talking about. And then somebody brought up Shannon Q coming to talk about it, and yeah, we'll get Shannon in. She'll tear his ass apart. And I know Shannon's background because I've watched a lot of her stuff. I watched her video on Christian counseling. I've watched her viewpoints on modern day debate, on other channels where she shared her views on human behavior. And I knew her background was that of a bachelor level student, completing a degree in psychology. And if you've ever done a clinical master's level program, and I did a bachelor's degree in psychology myself, I have a BS in psychology, you understand there's a significant difference in terms of your level of understanding, plus the experience I had in practicum, internship, and working professionally as a therapist. So when you sit there and say, hey, we're going to get this bachelor level student to sit there and sit your ass down and be able to show you the ropes, I'm like, you guys don't even understand. And so I wrote an email to Cyrus, which he ignored or didn't respond to, however you want to look at it, explaining to him, like, really, is Shannon Q is your person that's going to rebut these things? I said, she's not experienced and educated enough to do so. So again, when we had this thing on and she popped up in the stream and people were talking about her after I had said that, they're like, let's bring Shannon in. And so I took my stance of saying, these are the facts. She can sit. I don't have a problem that she doesn't know human behavior better than a layman who's on YouTube or Googling stuff. She has an education. She did a 4-year degree, and any type of level of education is commendable. But when you do clinical work at the master's level or PhD level, and you have field experience, it's a whole different ballgame. That was my only point. And so if you're going to sit there and bring somebody in to rebut my viewpoint on PTSD, either for diagnosis or treatment, you can't bring in somebody who's not a clinical practitioner. That's not fair to that person. And so when she started saying things like, what type of tools would you use for diagnosis? I'm like, well, maybe she did intake specialist. Maybe she did some things in behavioral health, working under licensure. I don't know. So then I asked questions about it. And then that made her feel defensive because I heard it in her tone of voice and some of the sarcastic remarks that she responded to. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to keep pushing this. I'm going to back off. And I did.
All right. But like, what are you, like, you've watched a lot of her videos. What is your...
I think she has a passion for human behavior. I think she's a good person. I think if she's really serious about wanting to push for it, she should do a master's program in clinical, either counseling or clinical social work, or go do a PhD in clinical psychology, become a psychologist. I mean, if you have a passion for things and you want to be taken serious, you got to have credentials. You just do.
Real quick, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. I'm on a headset, and I'm at work. I want to make sure you can.
Sounds a little bit quiet.
Quiet.
I agree 100% with her viewpoint on Christian counseling, because Christian counseling is not a clinical program either. And so her video that she did on Christian counseling was, in my viewpoint, accurate and fair.
Yeah, well, and I think that most of their problems.
Let me finish two more things that I wanted to say about her. And then the other thing that took me back was when she said, "Well, we don't refer to this as this. You know, we don't use the term cure." And I'm like, who the fuck is we? You know, and I did take offense to that to a degree, because she's saying who is the we that she's qualifying herself with. And when people use we, they're lumping themselves into an expert group or category as if that's above anything that I had training on. And then the other thing was when I would make comments and say, hey, here's what I believe and here's why I believe it, all you hear is, whoa, 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 out of her in the background. And I'm like, how about curiosity? How about asking follow-up questions? So, I mean, I would say those are the things personally that I had an issue with in the live stream. I say that if you really want to have somebody come debunk to me, you have to bring in somebody with qualifications and backgrounds and skills. You can't be a Google Fu master and think that you're going to come in there and have a better understanding of these things than I do. You just haven't put in the work and the time and the education level. And again, it's not personal against her. I think it was unfair for her by that community.
You know, I've watched a lot of her videos, probably not as much as a lot of people, but I've watched a lot of her newer videos in the last month or two since I've been turned on to her channel. I find her to be, you know, highly intelligent and compassionate, very smart. She likes to have fun. She has a you know, I'm going to take no shit type of attitude, which I really enjoy. I think the problem wasn't so much like she felt like she could combat you. With your history and the diagnosis or whatever. I think it was the wording, and I said it that night, and I reiterated that in my opening. It's that word cure, because cure, cure is a very strong word and requires really strong evidence. And in order to make sure somebody would be cured of something like PTSD, you would literally have to follow them around for the rest of their lives. And I think that's what they were trying to get to, is not take away from what you were actually able to do as a practitioner of this medicine or this technique, but just there's no way that you can call it a cure, you know, without one of those really long-term studies. And I think that was the argument.
It's 13 and a half years a long-term study?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm
a testimony for my own. I'm a testimony for my own life and what I teach and share. So it's not just a matter of me making these proclamations without foundation.
For me personally, like, and as a layman, outside of the argument that doesn't understand the science involved, doesn't understand the psychology involved, I would think that 13 years would be a long study. But to really understand that you have a cure, this is going to be something that would have to be shown. And you know, like 13 years isn't long enough. Like, what if they started having their PTSD again on the 14th year? You know, so I mean, it's really something you would pretty much have, in my opinion. And I don't know these things, and it's one of the reasons why I didn't interject during the conversation. Is I try not to talk about things if I don't know shit about it, right? But just as a layman outside looking in, like, I would have to think for something like that it would have to be a method that can be reproduced, and it would have to be shown that for the rest of these people's lives that they did not regress back into their PTSD. And I don't think that they're trying to take away from, all right, you might have a method that works and let's get it peer reviewed and let's do that. No, I think it's more the wording. You know, I think that was the big problem.
Or how people define things, or when people say, like I think a touching point, especially in this atheistic or even LGBTQ community, is when people have been told they can be healed from their LGBTQ, their sexual viewpoint or their gender identity. And I think that having that negative stigma could contribute to when I use the word cure for PTSD, anxiety, depression, personality disorders. And if you look up a word cure in a dictionary, it's pretty simplistic. It's to be free from symptoms of X, whatever that is.
Hey, John, would you speak a little bit about the symptoms that you used to suffer from before you were healed?
Anxiety, depression, rage, sexual addiction. I really never abused drugs, even though I used drugs and alcohol. I would say those things. I mean, I was abused by stepfathers, so there's obviously residual things of PTSD. It wasn't significant, but there was some sexual abuse when I was, under 12. But not anything that I ever related to traumatic things, though. Who knows how it had an effect on me in terms of, my anger and rage and violent predisposition that I used to have. So, I mean, I used to have road rage all the time. Used to, if somebody hurt my feelings at work or challenged me at work, I would magnify what they did 10 times just to be like, to protect myself. It was, poor coping skills for, dealing with the abuse and neglect that I went through growing up. So, I mean, from personal experience, I've been through a lot of stuff and been hurt, wounded in the ways that I was when I was younger. And it had a very negative effect on me as a young adult and even well into my early 30s, but as far as is when these changes started taking place in me 13 and a half years ago, when I had a revelation and understanding for us as human beings and learned to partner with my destiny in a healthy way. And I know I'm, again, using terms that people automatically relate to Christianese and all of a sudden put up their walls. But again, when you have revelation and insight for things that you possibly couldn't have gained any other way, and then I searched for that knowledge and truth on the internet, in books, in research, did a psychology program after that, did a clinical counseling program after that. And again, it helped my terminology with what I understood, and it helped my ability to articulate those things and eventually be able to put those things into practice, not only for myself, but also for friends, family, from a non-therapeutic aspect, but also on a clinical aspect in therapy with clients. So it works, and whether people are skeptical of it doesn't, I don't care. That's not my issue and my burden. I just sit there and say, hey, there's hope, there's opportunity. And when people say, well, show me peer-reviewed articles, I don't have to have it peer-reviewed. The majority of cognitive behavior therapy is already peer-reviewed, and this is just another modification of it. No different than when dialectical behavior therapy came out, when Marshall Linehan developed that for treating personality disorders, primarily borderline personality disorder. And again, I pushed what I do and what I believe in the way that I view human behavior up against DBT, and DBT doesn't hold a candle to it. What I do is far more effective because it reorients the way that people see themselves and see the world in a healthy way, not a, how do I cope with this? How do I deal with this when this is going on? And I think public and private behavioral health in general are putting Band-Aids on things that need deeper treatment and help.
Well, and, I think that in our community, especially, atheists are, holy shit, Lady Midnight is blowing up Discord. In our community, atheists are skeptical. We're skeptical of everything. And especially if it affects you, like I spoke, of a person that I know and I care about deeply, and I think one of the reasons why we're not together is her PTSD, and it's very real. Like I remember watching her sleep at night, and she would jerk awake from nightmares. I mean, it was scary sometimes, and I would love for her to get treatment that would cure her. So I think people, one of the things we do in our community is expose, faith healing doctors, what we would call charlatans, people that sell false hope. And I think that a lot of those radars go off with people in this community when somebody comes along and says a cure. That's what I'm saying. Like my problem with the whole argument is that word cure. But like I'm fairly, like, I'm at least honest enough to say I don't know dick about this, you know, and my opinion is that just my opinion. I don't know dick about this. So, you know, I would love for this conversation to be with people that knew about that. Like, I think that you and Shannon Q going head to head, maybe not about this specifically, but maybe just to air your grievance with her that you had. I think that would be an interesting conversation. But who am I to set that up? That would be between the two of y'all. You know, we can't do the atheist rationale thing.
The only personal thing with her again was her saying "we." I didn't think that was appropriate, and her going "whoa, whoa, whoa" as if I'm saying something that's absurd. So those are the only two personal things I ever have against anything that she's ever said or done herself.
Well,
again,
you know,
again, yeah, like it was you guys. It was not you. When I say you guys, the atheistic community that she associates with, putting her up on this pedestal, I thought was unfair to her, and it was untrue for anybody that's in the field as a clinical practitioner.
Well, yeah, and I kind of agree with that. Like, because I wasn't in the chat. Cyrus is a good friend, and I probably should reach out to him and ask him about that. But
have him send the email I sent to him. I mean, I know. He never responded to it, but it's there.
But yeah, I can see where like people would I mean get outraged over the wording. But like I said, I'm not an expert in this field. Like I would love to see a damn. Not even a cure. Like I would just love to see a successful therapy that can be reproduced, and to not only help my ex-girlfriend, but people coming out of wars that I don't think they should be in. You know, like I do know some guys with PTSD back from Afghanistan, and sometimes it's really scary being around those people. You know, so like I would love to see that. So that's just my whole thing on it. I wanted to talk about it briefly. Y'all can feel free to jump in and talk about it for a little bit more before we move on to other topics. I know Atheist Rationale said that he could definitely come on after Tuesday, and I think, you know, I would have to play more of a moderator role, and that would just be pretty much you two battling it out. Sure. I don't think you could. I don't see a possibility of you two coming to terms on the issue. You know, so it would basically just be you guys arguing with each other.
Hey, Nakasuchi. Hey, I'd like to say that I think it's interesting that as the screen appears with John in the middle there, Martha is on his right and I'm on his left, which I find interesting because Martha is kind of the future experience and I'm a past experience. And what I mean by that is I had PTSD. I was in a combat MOS. I was in Desert Storm, and I came out of that with real problems. I mean, problems I couldn't solve. And everything that John has been describing that he's experienced, I've experienced as well, not only in how I was negatively affected, but also in what happened to me. Now, I don't have the model that he has, but I know that what he's saying is actually true because it happened to me, and it happened in the exact order he's giving it. Now, that's why I know he's not lying. Okay. And I think Martha is here to share her experience as well.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that he's lying. I want to put that, and I think I explained
I didn't say you meant that.
I hopefully I explained that well enough in my introduction when I mirrored that video, is because I definitely don't like, I believe that Messenger has the experience that he says he has and has practiced this technique. And I truly believe that Messenger thinks that it's a cure and he's cured these people. My problem isn't with that at all. It's the word cure. And it wasn't so much my problem as the problem of other, you know, Atheist Rationale and Dragnot in particular took some offense to that. But they expressed that themselves. That's not them. Hey, man, I'm so pissed off that not talking to me. They express, you know, I'm just talking about what happened last weekend. You know, and you know, like I did want to, you know, I felt like Sean kind of got beat up a little bit, or Atheist Rationale got beat up by Will coming in at the end of that, and I didn't like that part, which I expressed that as well. So I didn't.
Well, Will self-admitted he'd been having a few drinks and stuff. So.
Yeah, he came in pretty hot to talk to kind of take over the conversation. But yeah, well, I'm going to look forward to that. That'll really be my first time playing moderator. We never got the whole Sky Out thing with you, and then you and John never really ended up debating, but seem to kind of get along better now. So that kind of worked out. So I'll actually get to play moderator between you and Atheist Rationale on my channel. That's going to be pretty awesome. But I don't know like how much moderating there's going to be, because I think it's going to be Atheist Rationale yelling at you and you yelling at Atheist Rationale.
Well, as long as I don't drink, I usually have a fairly good filter when people behave poorly.
Which, you know, he's a good kid, so I think he's just coming from the point of his PTSD, not really wanting to talk about the personal experience. But
we don't have to talk about those experiences. Again, a lot of what I do is reframing and reorienting the way that they view themselves, the way they see others, and the way they see the world. And once that occurs, and they can do it in a healthy way in the present, they can take that same lens and look at that past experience, and it isn't as traumatic or even affecting them in the ways that it used to. And again, I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I mean, and like I'm not one that's going to take that away from you. Like if you say you've seen it and you clearly like I said in my introduction, like you clearly know the field, like, you know, that's one thing that I think that Shannon Q came into the conversation was able to at least seal for me is like, all right, you know, you might not agree with what he's saying, but he clearly knows what he's talking about because you guys were clearly using a lingo that was above my head, you know, like, so, that's why I say, like, I don't think, you know, I think that you honestly believe it. It's just going to, for people outside that haven't seen your technique or don't know you personally, you know, our skeptical natures are going to take over. And you know how, especially atheists are, it's like, prove it. You know,
it just really bothers me that so many people are seeing therapists that are not giving them a hope for not being free from these things. Because when I went to school for 3.5 years, it's still taught in there that once treatment takes place and they no longer have the symptomology, they aren't those disorders anymore. They're not diagnosed with them anymore, because if you don't meet the criteria, you don't meet the criteria. And that's the whole purpose of treatment. Now, they do believe that things like bipolar 1 disorder, schizoaffective, schizophrenia, ADHD are truly biological disorders that require psychotropic medication to help manage and treat. But also along with that should go some type of therapy, whether it be psychoanalytic, cognitive therapy, yes, behavioral therapy, whatever. So it's not just, you can't just treat the biological and think that's the magic pill. And you can't just do talk therapy if something more is required to help heal or repair those things that are going on with your hormones and neurotransmitters. Sometimes it's both.
Well, I had but I don't know if you can hear me okay or not. I hope you can. But back,
hear you well.
Okay. Back when I was in New Jersey, I had a therapist, and I was taking medication for ADHD. I was taking Adderall. And since moving to Georgia, my neurologist, because the side effects for Adderall suck, and I can't be zombied out all the time. I have a house to run. I have 2 cats. I have a dog. I have a husband. I have a job, and I can't just be, you know, Walking Dead Marty all the time. So as for my neurologist, she was like, well, then, you know, if you don't need it and it doesn't affect, you know, if it doesn't serve you for your job or school, then don't take it anymore. So I stopped. But I was taking Adderall, and I was in therapy. So I'm at work right now. So if you hear me out of breath, it's because I'm like sweeping and mopping and cleaning up. I just wanted to, because I saw one of, I sat in on one of John's live streams, and was that the self-esteem one, John, that I was in? Was that, or there was one that I sat in on.
I think it was the one. Are you talking about the one that you were in the live chat?
Yeah. Was it that one?
I think it was the Understanding Your Purpose.
Okay. But I did see the self-esteem. Oh, the self-esteem was the one you told me to watch first.
Right.
And aside from all the Christianity stuff, boy, did that stuff make a lot of sense. Because I would, and he's right, a lot of people don't want to, you know, because it takes work. A lot of people don't want to do the work. A lot of people, and I'm not saying this for everybody. I don't know Atheist Rationale personally. So I don't know Drag too well. I just know it's from his channel. So I don't know what's going on in their head. Maybe they do want to, I don't know. This isn't a shot at either of them. So don't freak out, Atheist Rationale. But I don't know what's going on in their heads. But I know for myself, I'll be 42 in June. I've been feeling like this for as long as I can remember, at least since I was 6. I'm over it. I'm fucking sick of this. I'm sick of like my self-esteem being in the shitter because my dad used to tell me that I was stupid and or lazy when I was a kid, which is why I was making bad grades. When that wasn't it. It was ADHD that was the problem. I'm sick of, every time if my husband tells me something and I forget it and like he acts like it's the end of the world, I'm sick of like going, geez, I shouldn't even exist. I mean, what the hell? He told me something 2 days ago and I forgot. What the fuck is wrong with me? It sucks. So, I mean, if whatever work it's going to take, then I'm all for it. So, that's just, I'm sorry, I'm kind of half distracted because like I said, I'm at work. So that's where I'm coming from. I haven't had a chance to watch all of the videos because I had jury duty all week and I had to work all week, so I haven't really had a whole lot of time of like just sitting downtime. But the one that I saw, I don't know if you had a chance to go through those videos, Knox, but if you do, at least check out a couple of them so that you maybe have an idea of what John's talking about.
Yeah, I probably should do that definitely before the next conversation with Atheist Rationale, just to have an understanding. Yeah, I probably should. I just don't have much time to watch hardly anything. Like,
no, I hear you.
Knock, I'll send you links with 2 of them and just watch them like on 1.25 or 1.5. You'll get through them quicker.
All right. Yeah, I need to start doing that more. I was like, I could watch a lot more if I even 2 times 2, man. I need more time.
Reese had a question for you in the live chat.
Is Martha a real witch?
Yes. I have been practicing and studying witchcraft for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. You're Wicca, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, I am a real witch.
One of my personal experiences back when I was religious was with witches, or a male witch, a warlock.
A male witch is still a witch.
Yeah, he called himself a Strigone, which was Italian for an old witch cult in Italy.
The Strigan, yep. I know what that is.
It was like at the time it was an experience that I thought was supernatural, but
no,
have realized it wasn't. But yeah, he was an interesting dude. He was pretty cool. Different, kind of dark. But I know, like, I think you're more of an earth type Wicca witch, right? Yeah,
in general, there's no supernatural in witchcraft. It's all it's natural. I don't have to prove that Earth exists because it's not supernatural. Yeah. it's there all the time. I don't have to prove any of that. There's no supernatural. Like I have to prove that of a supernatural stuff. I don't have to. There's no supernatural. It's all natural. I don't appeal to the supernatural.
Yeah, what I think he was good at was just really getting in people's heads. I mean, I kind of spoke about it with Richard in our last conversation. Not this guy specifically, but this guy was just really good at feeling people out, getting in their heads, saying the right things to really mess with your mind. Really, like he was really good at playing mind tricks. But yeah, I got off track a little bit. We'll get back into this.
We can have a conversation about witchcraft, Nakasuchi, another day if you want to.
Yeah. I'm interested in all. Like, it's not very often that you can get a witch and talk to them.
Yeah, we'll set something up for a day when I'm off if we want to do a conversation. We can do that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But all right, so yeah, let's get back to the topic at hand. We'll discuss more of this in context. We'll let Atheist Rationale come on if you're willing to do that, Messenger, and let him air his grievances, and you can
set that up.
Combat him. I think he said he could do it after Tuesday. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. Now I want to. It's the same conversation. We're going to keep it on mental health and lead it into suicide, because I just don't really think people are talking about this enough. And I tried to do research on recent numbers. Didn't quite make it there, so I'm not quite sure. But I do know that like a couple years ago, suicide was really high in the atheist community, really high in homosexual communities. But I think that it's all mental health. It kind of stems what we've been talking about all along. I am of an opinion like we one of the reasons why I love Bernie Sanders is universal health care. And I think that healthcare of the mind should be as important as healthcare of the body. And I think everybody should have access to therapy. Like, I don't think you need PTSD to go to therapy. I think every human being should have access to therapy. I think it would help us be a better world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as somebody who's been suicidal since about 7th grade, I mean, there's also like a stigma attached to it, because there's this whole, well, if you're really suicidal, you would have just killed yourself already, and you're just asking for attention. And it's not like that at all.
No, suicidal ideation is not like that whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, I would see it as a struggle, like you're trying not to do it. Like,
yeah, really,
I don't think
it really is.
It's an immediate thing.
It really is a struggle to try and find a reason not to. The last time that and I've done this numerous times. I've had, bad day, and I've stood in my shower with a knife to my wrist, and I've gone on the internet and I've like, okay, this is back when I used to take Adderall. How many of my Adderall do I need to take to not wake up? And if it doesn't work, what's the damage going to be after that? And I'm like, no, because I have cats, and my husband is not a cat person, and he'll get rid of those cats in a second. So I kind of have to stay for the cats.
I'm very glad you had cats.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, it's still there. It doesn't go away, at least right now, because I haven't actually watched all of John's videos. So, right now, what's kind of keeping me around is, one, my cats, and I play Dungeons and Dragons. I have a Dungeons and Dragons group that we play with just about every week. Sometimes shit happens and someone can't make it, but and we have a channel. It's private right now, but that's something that's also keeping me, because I'm like, okay, I have a story I'm part of a story now, so I have to be here. So my cats and the dog, and my husband will get rid of everybody, and my D&D group. But I've had the last really bad day was maybe almost a year or so ago. We were giving the dog Trifexis for fleas. It's a pill they have to eat before they take it, because otherwise it'll make them throw up. But so my husband gave him breakfast, and he told me that he said he was giving the dog his Trifexis. I didn't hear him. So about 10 or so minutes later, I gave him another one. And all hell broke loose, because I could have made him really, really sick. It wasn't going to kill him, but it could have made him really, really sick. Luckily, I was checking in like every hour. My husband said he was just a little lethargic, and he just had a little diarrhea. But other than that, he was feeding him like small meals during the day. And I was just like, wow, I'm the biggest fucking shit on the planet. What am I even doing here? So I wrote a note. I wrote a suicide note to my husband, like, look, keep the cats, because you're the only person that they know, because we've had one of my cats since he was like 6-8 weeks old. You're the only person they know. Keep the dog. Contact this person. I want the pagan bridge. The whole nine. Like, look, I'm just gonna go, so you don't have to deal with me anymore. And maybe the goddess will send me back with a different functioning brain, or maybe she'll just keep me in the Summerland. I don't know. But I'm just gonna go, so you don't have to deal with me anymore. And that really sucked. Like I was like, that was a really bad time. And there's a stigma behind it, because my husband doesn't know that I'm like that. My family don't know. Actually, like, this is probably one of the only times I've openly spoke about it. My work don't know. My boss just knows I'm depressed, but that's about it. I think my therapist back in Jersey, like 10, 15 years ago, might have told him, but that's it. Because there's a stigma behind it that if you think about killing yourself, well, if you were really truly serious, then you would just do it already. But go fuck yourself. That really pisses me off when people say that, because you don't know, like, you don't know. It's a struggle to find something.
Yeah, it's people say, I used to say that when I was younger, and it's something that you say out of ignorance. Because it doesn't work like that, and all you're doing is really making it worse. Athena wants to come in. He says he has knowledge on the, something that relates to this topic, I told him I would ask. So it's up to you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have to mute for 1 second because I have to go do a walkthrough and check on the dog. So, but I'll be listening. But I have to mute just for a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was getting an equal opportunity to share it, and I wanted to make sure Martha and Richard both had, the same opportunity to share their viewpoints, and didn't want to get too many people in there and then having too much commotion. So I said if she was done or he was done, I don't have a problem with that. I just didn't want to get a huge panel because then I think it deflected the conversation you wanted to have regarding these three topics.
Yeah,
there's one more thing. Sorry,
me too. We will cut it off after Athena, and Athena is usually pretty good about letting people talk. So I don't want it to become too big, and definitely don't want it to be a huge free for all, because this is a serious topic, and it's something that I've been looking forward to getting into. But I sent the link, Athena, and he said he'll leave afterwards. But I don't mind. Like I'm with Messenger on this one though. Like I just don't want it to get too big to where then people can't speak.
Yeah, and I wanted to share something because she was bringing up the suicidal ideation, and people not taking it serious because they either don't have an attempt or haven't been successful in doing it. And there's two points when somebody is feeling depression is not the direct emotion that leads to suicidal thoughts. It's cognitive along with depression, of having that cognitive viewpoint of despair and hopelessness. And it's the despair and hopelessness that sets in to where people become so intense in that emotional despair and in that emotional depression. It's beyond depression. It's despair, that there isn't cognitive thought of my cats. It isn't cognitive thoughts about my kids. It's not cognitive thoughts about my family. It's not cognitive thoughts about my spouse. It's a complete state of despair within somebody. And people think that, how could they do that to their kids? Could they do that to their family? How could they do that to their animals? Because when there's that level of despair and hopelessness present, there is no thinking and reasoning in the way that we think and reason when we're calm or peaceful.
I'd like to say that the only thing that kept me alive for about 10 years during those battles of depression and thinking about committing suicide was life insurance. I couldn't find a way to be sure that I could trick the adjuster that it was an accident that I died. So it would take care of my wife and my kids.
That's heavy right there, man.
Yeah, serious. Okay, I don't mean to. Sorry, I know it's a serious topic. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sorry. I feel bad for laughing now, because what you said was was bad, was bad, but at the same time I found it kind of funny. I'm sorry, but like I said, I'm not trying to laugh at a serious topic here, but if you could screen share, if you can, sorry, I'm screen sharing. If you can present me, I can read this really quick, and then I'll just leave. I'll stay here because it's something, it's pertinent to the conversation. So I was like, oh, hey, I wrote something about this. So,
all right, yeah, everybody should be seeing it now.
Okay. So why is suicide looked upon with such contempt? Sorry. Let me start off by saying that being suicidal and actually wanting to commit suicide are two totally different things. That being said, there is this fallacy people commit when it comes to people who are suicidal. The fallacy is that people who have suicidal tendencies, thoughts, are a danger to themselves and others. An example of this is from an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, in which Worf's brother comes to the station to ask his brother to perform something called Maldak Vor, a Klingon ritual allowing a Klingon to kill their disgraced sibling, which in turn would restore their honor in the afterlife. Ignoring the many questions and assumptions. Yeah, I know, Deep Space Nine is awesome.
I love Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, screw it. Never mind, continuing. Okay. This ritual is seen as immoral. In fact, the Geodax is the one who realizes what Korn wanted Worf to do and stopped it. This is due to the fact that both humans and Trills view suicide, unless under extreme conditions, to be wrong. Being denied his chance to find honor in death at the hands of his brother Korn falls deeper into depression as being a member of a dishonored house. He has no place in the Empire. Worf manages to get Kern a job as an officer with station security run by Odo. There is an incident where Korn was chasing someone down, caught up with him, and rather than react when he pulled out a weapon, Kern let himself be shot. The plot of this episode, Sons of Moog, season 4, episode 15, uses the assumption that those who have suicidal tendencies will or not do something. Will do or not do something that will cause them harm and death. Knowing that he cannot kill his brother, but still wanting him to find some form of peace and have some kind of life, Worf makes the decision to have Dr. Bashir wipe Kern's memory and alter his DNA so he is, in essence, a new being. When do we say someone has suicidal tendencies? Most have. Yeah, must they have expressed such tendencies verbally or written them down? If people who put themselves in dangerous situations, such as skydiving, mountain climbing, etc., while knowing the risks involved in doing such activities, do we say they're suicidal? Now, you could argue that those are not good examples of suicidal tendencies because I don't know their state of mind. They could just be thrill seekers and adrenaline rush junkies. To which I would reply with, if I can't look at those two activities and come to the conclusion that the people doing those activities, fucking typo, those activities have suicidal tendencies, how can you say the same? Do you know their state of mind? How does it not apply to you as well? How can you tell me I don't know their state of mind when you yourself can't say the same? Should I continue? Is everyone getting bored? Because it is kind of long.
The idea.
Yeah, I kind of get the idea.
I mean, there is more. Like there is more because I do try to say, people who want to commit suicide, don't value their life, and by extension, don't value other people's lives. To which I argue, well, no, that's not true. There are serial killers who value their lives, more than other people. In essence, they do not value someone else's life. So for people to say that, suicidal people don't value other people's lives is retarded. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about being suicidal. Yeah. I know, like, this is something else that I've never really experienced. I've been depressed, but I've never been suicidal.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess
it is like you have those opinions, but thinking about it logically, like, of course not. Like, everybody's different. Everybody's gonna react different to psychosis.
Yeah, and this is something I thought about for years because throughout like these past 20 years, 14 years, people are always say, whenever people talked about people who wanted to kill themselves, they're cowards, this and that, and I never, you know what I mean, those things never, you know what I mean, I never believed them, you know what I mean. I just see like, well, no, that's not true, you know what I mean, but I figured, okay, let me continue because
a lot of noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm making breakfast for the dogs for tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Gauging someone's state of mind can be a bit difficult. One could talk about feeling suicidal, express their suicidal thoughts in a journal or something else, but not one to actually attempt it. A friend of mine I talked to about this said that in his experience, the people who really should watch out, the people you really should watch out for are the ones who are quiet. They show no outward sign of depression or express any suicidal tendencies. However, there may come a day when they seem to be unusually happy and very generous, giving away their possessions. Suicide is one of those topics that no one can agree on, given the ultimate conclusion of the discussion, the cessation of life. It is more often than not seen as an irrational and cowardly solution to life's problems. Another thing people say is that people who try to commit suicide just want attention. Well, there is some truth to that. The act of wanting attention isn't in and of itself wrong. How that attention is sought is, though. I don't think that is something people will necessarily disagree with. The reasons for why someone would want to commit suicide, whether impulsively or planned, can be due to a multiple of factors. Bullying, financial difficulties, relationship issues, mental illnesses can cause someone to attempt suicide. Whether they are successful or not is dependent on the method they choose. Another assumption that has always bothered me is the whole if you don't value your life, how can you value the life of others? People who often make such a statement fail to account for people known as sociopaths. Maybe I used the wrong one, but people who value their own life above all others and see other people as mere objects they can play with. Serial killers are notorious in that regard. They will have no problem hurting someone else, striking fear into them. But when they are the ones being hurt, they will cry out that they want to live, that they don't like being hurt. Soldiers who come back from wars often commit suicide due to not being able to readjust to civilian life, often living events due to having developed post-traumatic stress disorder. It is also often said that suicidal people are acting irrational, that the reasons they are killing themselves are not reasonable. Well, are all suicidal people irrational? What reasons would be considered rational? Would suicide be allowed if, say, someone had an incurable disease that left them in pain day after day? Why keep that person alive if they want death? Are we that afraid of death that we won't even allow someone who is in pain and can't be cured to end their own life? Why? For emotional reasons? Why should that person be made to suffer their entire life just to spare your feelings?
Or
What
maybe
about
they
all
just need
the
healed.
well, there was a god. Never mind. Go on. What about all of the children who are born with incurable diseases and conditions who, rather than being spared the agony that awaits them depending on the diseases, are forced to suffer because the mother and father put emotion above everything else? There is a reality that a lot of people seem to overlook when people with disabilities or incurable diseases come into the world. The amount of time and resources that goes into taking care of them. Families go through tremendous stress as they have to both work and take care of the child or children with one or more conditions. A lot of the reasons people often give for keeping children with problems alive are based solely on emotion and do not, and do under address the reality of it. Okay, I need to edit that. And if they do, they just address it as passing. Well, of course it will be hard, but it'll be worth it, which feels like they don't understand the magnitude of the situation. People with disabilities and conditions that make their lives harder to live are also kept alive because there is no way for anyone to really know if they will simply remain the way they are or somehow actually make it and accomplish something no one else could. Stephen Hawking comes to mind, though for the first 20 years of his life he showed little to no signs of the disease known as Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS for short. This illness causes the death of neurons that control the brain and the spinal cord, paralyzing him gradually over the years. The form of ALS Hawking had was rare, early onset, and slow progressing, one hell of a condition. Part of the reason why Stephen Hawking was so successful in life was due to the support system he had. A lot of people severely underestimate how much difference a rock solid support system can make. There are people out there who manage to beat the odds with little or no support, but those are the exceptions to the rule. Life is not always clear cut. What works for one person won't necessarily work for everyone. Whenever I hear someone say, well, I was able to get out of my situation, why can't person X? It depends on a case by case basis. There could be someone who comes from an underprivileged background, such as poverty, violence, but managed to make it through life, while others in the same situation simply stagnate and accept their place in life. This applies to all people, regardless of where they came from. However, for every Stephen Hawking, there are millions of people who suffer in the world whose situations may never change. Family members may hold on to that hope as a way of coping with the situation they were dealt with, but it is simply denying the reality. But it is simply denying the reality of it. I don't know what the answer is. The argument of keeping someone who has disabilities or a terminal disease alive due to the possibility that they may accomplish something has some validity in the sense that as limited beings we simply do not have enough knowledge of the future to make an informed decision. However, it is also that same ignorance that makes us keep people but stability is alive. On the other side of this issue are situations where we must consider a future where our lifespans are increased beyond what it is now. The current average worldwide lifespan at birth is 71.5. That is 68 years and 4 months for males and 72 years, 8 months for females. However, there are people who manage to live well into their 90s and some who surpass 100. There are many scientists working on ways to increase our lifespans exponentially, allowing us to live for as long as we want to. However, there are many people who view scientists such as Aubrey de Grey as nothing more than quacks whose research will not yield anything. And even if he managed to create like therapies that could extend human life, there is no guarantee we'd live to see it or even benefit from it. Call me hopeful for the future, but I fully support Aubrey de Grey's ventures into combating mankind's oldest and greatest enemy, death itself. Let us assume that Aubrey de Grey manages to do what he says, and most of the people living today will be able to live. I know it's kind of long. I've been working on it for a while. Live 1,000 years or more. If someone gets to be, say, 10,000 years old and accomplishes everything they wanted to in life, they have seen all they wanted to see, read all they wanted to read, and accomplished as much as they could within their given profession. The only thing they want to do is die. Should they not be given that choice, while assuming assuming current societal trends continue, they'll most likely be told that they would still have more to live for, that they will be missed by the people around them, etc. This, of course, assumes that suicide will still be viewed negatively in certain societies as it is now. However, societies tend to change significantly in 10,000 years. So for all I know, suicide will be accepted after a certain age. I'm almost done, I promise. An example of the above was beautifully portrayed, at least in my opinion, in an episode of Star Trek Voyager entitled Death Wish. In this episode, the crew accidentally released a member of the Q Continuum from what they assume is some strange comet. Believing this Q to be the Q that has plagued Picard and had a brief excursion on Deep Space Nine, Janeway puts the ship on red alert. To avoid confusion from now on, I'll be referring to Q from the comet as Q. Okay, whatever. Q2 was apparently a well-known philosopher in the Q Continuum who wanted to do something no other Q ever thought of doing, committing suicide. Even for the members of the Q Continuum, suicide is seen as something wrong. Mind you, the Q Continuum are beings of incredible power and knowledge. They can alter reality as they see fit and go anywhere they want, as well as go back in time if they should choose to. Members of the Q Continuum have been around since before the creation of the universe, so they have done and seen pretty much everything. The other members of the Q Continuum were threatened by what Q2 wanted to do, so they locked him away in a comet for 300 years. Q2 asked Janeway for asylum. A hearing is scheduled to take place in order to determine whether asylum may be granted and, by extension, the freedom to commit suicide. Janeway is obviously torn about it, as the ethical ramifications of either choice are significant enough that it puts pressure on her as to what the right choice is. If you have not seen the episode before, I suggest you do. So as it really is a good example of the topic of suicide and how complex it actually is. There are so many things to consider when thinking about suicide that many people do more of a disservice to someone who comes to them with these thoughts. I should also add that having suicidal thoughts and actually wanting to commit suicide are not the same thing. Suicidal thoughts may lead to suicidal attempts, but that's not always the case. People with suicidal thoughts often try to talk to someone about their thoughts or attempt to keep themselves busy by working or hanging out with friends. However, that may not always work, and they find themselves feeling isolated as no one understands what they are going through. If you feel suicidal, know that you are not alone. As someone who has suicidal thoughts throughout the day, I can understand how hard it is to deal with these feelings and how people look at you when you express such feelings. If it gets to be too much, try to get some help. Try to get help in any way you can. And then I put the and then I put the the suicide hotline and site. I mean, I don't know. Was that good? Was that
I think that there is definitely some things to be talked about there.
Yeah, you can stop presenting me now. There you go.
For one, all right. So there's two things that I would speak of, and that would be why well, three things why we consider suicide to be bad in our society. Because for a long time, I think that I thought that we considered suicide to be bad for religious reasons, because of religion, and now I don't. I
there
think
is some, well, there is some truth to that.
but I think that it's something that we just innately know is bad. You know, like life is precious. We know that. Well, I mean, it is a psychosis, right? Like suicidal thoughts.
Well, hang on,
psychosis, right, Messenger?
Sorry, I was dealing with stuff in the live chat.
And there is a difference, real quick, if I can. There's a difference between being.
Do you think that's a troll, or do you think that's somebody that was serious about wanting to harm themselves? Because somebody just blocked somebody.
I'm not sure. I haven't. I never get to pay attention to the live chat.
Atheist Rationale blocked somebody who was saying that they wanted to harm themselves. So, Atheist Rationale, don't do that. That's not cool.
That's exactly what we were just talking about.
I mean, if you're going to abuse your mod privileges, you shouldn't have them. You can block a racist comment. You don't have to hide somebody completely.
Oh yeah,
okay,
I don't like that one.
We're deviating from the point.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Marty.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Also, real quick, if and then we can go on to what Tina was just saying. There's a difference between.
Oh yeah, no, fuck that guy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but if somebody's threatening to harm themselves, even if they say something stupid.
Well, I'm not. I didn't see the comments about harming.
Oh no! Wait, hold on. He said, "I hope you all suicide." That he wasn't saying that he was harming himself.
Yeah, no,
he just said we all
to kill ourselves. And
scroll up. He said,
"Get rid of the blacks," and I'm in the KKK.
Up at the top, one of the comments he said, "I'm feeling suicidal." He said, "I'm a suicide. I'm feeling suicidal. My dad punched me because I called him a coon." So those are comments he made. So when he said, "I'm feeling,"
now I'm reading those now. So I don't know, man. I think maybe in the context with the end of it, he's definitely trolling.
Yeah,
it's a possibility, but I'm saying at the same time, you have to take those things serious. Even if somebody's behaving poorly and saying stupid stuff, that you can block their comments without erasing them completely.
No, he came in saying racist shit. I didn't even notice it because I never look at my chat. God is real. He's a coon. Is his first comment?
Well, he just posted underneath this Morris 70H. Do you see that?
Well, John, your link is going to be in the channel here, underneath this channel here. So if he really wants some help, he can seek it.
I mean, we're deviating from the point here. Like,
yeah. Like if you seriously need help, I'm sure Messenger will talk to you, or whatever. I do not do racist comments in my chat, so that is why you've been hidden. And
if you're really having suicidal ideation, whoever you are, you need to either dial 911 or call the National Suicide Crisis Line at 800-273-8255.
And I would definitely read some books and not be a racist douchebag.
Well, I mean, I have to disagree with you with something you said before. You correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that we innately know that suicide is wrong?
Well, I think so. I don't think that it's like I used to think it was like a religious thing, based upon going.
Well, no. It kind of is. It kind of.
I don't know. Like, all right. So this is my argument for say why I would want to not have an option to assist suicide people born with disabilities. Now, I think it depends on the disability, because I would be fully for it if it's say a life that's going to be in constant pain, right? But I, as a humanist, would never ever want any laws. I don't think for assisted suicide of human beings that could, as you say, do great things in their life or just live life, and maybe I don't know. I think that innately suicide is wrong. And we just know it. And I think well before religion, they probably knew the same thing. Well, life is precious. You know.
I don't agree with that, Knock. If I know somebody who's in a ridiculous amount of pain.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's in a ridiculous amount of pain, then that's a different conversation.
Right. Like if they say I'm ready to go and they want my help or whatever, then but it's not my place to say, look, you have to stick around because I
am for like assist suicide for older people that are going through constant pain. Like I don't think that we should force old people that have lived a full life to live through misery because of some religious fucking tradition. And I think that's the point that Athena is trying to make, and I do agree with that. Religion is involved, but like, I could never be behind assist suicide for
look.
Anybody young enough, anybody that's going to have a chance to live a life that's. I don't think I could be for it because I think innately we know like life is precious. Like.
But I'd rather not see someone suffer. You know what I mean? I would rather not see somebody, no matter how old they are, suffer and be in pain. And, that's just me. I couldn't,
Well, that's what I'm saying. It depends on.
Hang on. I want to say something. Here's a question for you. If we innately know life is precious, why is there so many people killing each other in the world?
Well, I mean. Well, and that's what I'm saying.
No offense, Raging, but I do not agree that that we think life is precious innately. It's something that develops, in you from the society you live in. Like same with suicide. You know what I mean? If you lived in a society where where suicide wasn't stigmatized, where people were actually able to have a rational discussion about it, without people losing their fucking shit. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think the two really equate though. Like you're talking about war.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
And war is.
Wait, what? I said nothing about war.
Are you talking about like serial killers or something, Athena? You're talking about like murderers?
No, you did mention war, like
Well, like, serial killers in the blog, serial killers in in my blog post. But right now, I'm saying that we don't innately find life precious. It's something that develops in the society.
Well, no, your argument, your argument is. That we don't find life precious because we have wars, and we
no.
I think what he's saying is that like when you're like a little kid, you don't have the concept of life being precious. You don't think that way because you're a kid. It's taught to you. The society tells you that life is precious, life is a gift, life is short, life is great, life is good. Don't worry, be happy. All that stuff. It's a developed. It's taught actually.
No,
it's not. Nobody.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that even as a child, I understood that life is precious. Like you touch the stove, you don't touch that stove again.
Yeah, but you're not
because you innately know that it's precious, and you're trying to take care of yourself. You're stumbling through it, but you're not rushing headlong into death because you innately know that you don't want to die.
You're not. You're not everybody else.
Yeah, I didn't have a concept of I don't want to die when I was like 5.
I think that's well proven. Like any child, I mean, you're going to touch the stove once, you're not going to touch it twice. It's inside of us not to want that. I think that suicidal thoughts are a psychosis. And when you're talking about assist suicide, then you have to define, all right, what is okay and what isn't. And then those definitions are going to be very varied. Like you're going to have a wide spectrum of people with opinions on that. And people are going to be put to death basically without ever having a chance to live. That might not need to be. Like I could never get behind that legislation ever in a million years. I think you need to combat psychosis. But, if you want to talk assist suicide for older people living in misery, yeah, I'm all for that shit. you know, but they have lived their life and they should have that option, you know. Or if you are, I don't know. Just as a humanist, I can't get behind it, but I think it's innate in all of us. I mean, you see it in children all the time. You know, they're.
Look, I fully respect your humanist views. Like, you know, it's very great. You know, it's very great that you care so deeply, you know, about your fellow man, not excluding you. Hang on, not excluding you, Marfa. I'm using man as in, you know, encompassing everybody.
It's okay, Athena. I knew what you meant.
Spit it out.
Yeah, man.
But
you need to smoke another one.
No, obviously, you know, obviously eating milk and cereal. But I don't know. I have to disagree with you. I just, you know, I get your humanist, you know, your humanist view. It's great, but I don't know. I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, I mean, you know, quite honestly, I think you admitted to having suicidal thoughts, and Martha does too. So yeah, I think you're gonna have a different perspective than me naturally because I don't have those thoughts. So for me naturally, and that's why I was trying to ask Messenger. I believe it's a psychosis, but I'm not an expert in that shit. You know, like I really don't know. It's just my opinion, and I, you know, I get in. Some leftists do believe in assist suicide for those situations.
I just want you.
I get in trouble for it. It's just how I feel.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there that I've talked to, like, who was a psychologist, you know, like a while ago, and he said I wasn't insane or suicidal. So I mean, just because
somebody can tell you you're not suicidal if you're feeling like harming yourself. I mean, that's
no. See, my thing, like, you know, let me actually clarify. Let me actually clarify a few things. Yeah, I think about suicide, but my shtick is more analyzing it.
Well, when we talk about thinking about suicide, we're thinking of, when you use that term, you're thinking about committing suicide. If you say I'm thinking about suicide, you're saying you're implying that you're thinking about committing it. So if you say, hey, I do research in regard to suicide, or I contemplate what it might be like for somebody else who's contemplating suicide, you just got to be more clear for what you're meaning.
Well, I mean, I can do both, actually. Well, you know, I can think about suicide, but at the same time wonder, wonder what the point of it all is. And then, you know, write that tries to analyze people's various misconceptions of it.
You know, I agree that, like, I think that suicide is stigmatized in a negative way, and it shouldn't be. I think that we should talk about suicide, and, you know, people should be aware that this is a thing that is happening all across the board in every single demographic, and that this is something that we should be trying to combat, you know, and to even go along, like with my point that I feel like we feel like life is precious innately, like, you know, when I said that, and this is me, I've never had suicidal thoughts, but I can understand, like, to me, people that are struggling with that are trying not to do it, and that is that innate. Yeah. That is that thing that's innate. Like, you don't want to die. You know, you just really don't, you know, so that's why I say it's, to me, well, I always religious. To me, it's not. I think that there's a will for us to live.
It's more if I had to find something in order
it's more of a self. I mean? It's more. Hold on. Yeah, I can explain that right away. Like, you know, humans themselves are the ones that find life precious. But since you're a living organism, you're going to have some, what's the word? Survival. You know what I mean? Those are your survival mechanisms.
Self-preservation.
Thank you. Preservation. So, you know what I mean? You have preservations. My point is that, you know, my point is that we humans are the ones that say life is precious, but it's due to the preservation mechanisms we have. Like, if you really want to get basic level of it, that's the thing.
I do see your argument to a point as well, because we do have a history that is very brutal, and I do believe that we are evolved animals. I admit that, and I know people don't like it when we admit that, but I think that we're hairless apes. I'm not so hairless anymore, but I think that we're evolved animals. I think that killing is part of our nature.
There's literally evidence for that, regardless of what some people want to.
Just look at the mass food farms where we're butchering cows at a massive rate. But as a humanist, like, to me, I do value all life. I do find all life precious. It's one of my big struggles, because I'm a meat eater, and I've struggled with that over the last few years, because I don't want to eat meat anymore, because I know what is happening to all that life is just being wiped away.
Please, sorry if I can interrupt you. Please, if you're going to become a vegan, do not become one of the preachy ones.
That's the problem. That's all I eat is meat.
That's not good either, brother.
I know, like, I don't eat much vegetables,
Well, here's the thing: if you were born as a lion, would you be contemplating that eating meat is inhumane?
Well, but yeah, I think that's what makes us special. Like, we've come to a point to where we can be empathetic with other animals. Like, I think it was quite necessary for us to become what we have become, to dominate the world, and we use that with bloodshed. We killed ourselves, and we killed animals, and we killed land and trees. I mean, we kill everything all the time, so that goes against my argument that inherently we feel that life is precious. But I think, at least when it comes in regards to human life, maybe it is even a greedy thing that we are born with, just a greedy thing that we want to live life. But I think that we all have that mechanism, and even with people with the psychosis, that they're struggling with it. They're struggling trying not to do it because they have that mechanism. They want.
Well, if they didn't have that mechanism, it wouldn't be a struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
They would not fight it. They would just go with it if they didn't have that mechanism. And I'm glad people have that mechanism.
Me too. Because imagine, as bad as it is now, how many we'd be losing if we didn't.
Hundreds of times more.
Yeah, and this is the conversation that people need to have. Like, this is why I was so excited to have this conversation, because me and Messenger have been talking about having this conversation for a long time. There are pressures involved. Like, you just can't heal the psychosis to every demographic. People end up committing suicide for certain pressures that they're feeling from their society around them, from their normal active lives. In the case of the atheists, we're a lot of times are demonized from our families, and we lose everybody we loved, and we're pushed into a corner all alone. And people, that's a hard thing for human beings to deal with. So it's very sad to me, and maybe it's a greedy sadness when I see people take their lives. Like Robin Williams, to this day, I feel every single day that human being is not on earth making us laugh, because nobody could see through a smile. And it's just a tragedy to me. Yeah.
So let's say things that matter. Let me say, Martha, you can contact me anytime without judgment. I'm celibate. I'm not going to hit on you. You can say anything you want, and I will listen to you, and I will listen to anything you have to say, because you're my sister and I love you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted it real quick. I think what people don't understand is that there's a difference between being sad and being depression. I'll get sad if I watch, like, All Dogs Go to Heaven. That's a sad-ass movie. But I'm depressed all the time. And I can go to, people are like, well, you can go to work and you can, yeah. Because if I have to. So I might be, I guess, high-functioning depression I've heard of. I don't know, is that a thing, Messenger? Like the high-functioning depression, is that, like...
Well, there's 3 states that I talk to people about in terms of viewing things. There's healthy and unhealthy, and that's our inner state of being. And then there's functional and dysfunctional, and that's how we interact with the world around us in terms of society, how we interact at our job, how we interact in interpersonal relationship, intimate relationship. And so that's the functional or dysfunctional. So you could be a functional drug addict or a functional alcoholic or functionally depressed or functionally anxious. The unhealthiness of it is that those other things are underlying going on inside you, but you're still functional and you operate without being dysfunctional in those environments. And then, of course, there's normal and abnormal, which is normal is what is the social norm, and abnormal is what is opposed or against the social norm. So I think that you got to use those three different things: healthy or unhealthy, functional, dysfunctional, normal and abnormal in their correct context whenever you're addressing anything.
Right, because I've had like, you know, people, because my boss, I told my boss, I said, you know, depressed since I was in like junior high. She looked at me, she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, because I mean, you know, depression isn't like, at least for some people, at least not for me. It's not just, you know, you're just moping around, you're just, you know, like Eeyore. You know, like it's some people might be like that, but there are a lot of us that aren't. So I think we kind of slip through the cracks, because when everybody's thinking of depression, no one's thinking of like the Robin Williams or the Anthony Bourdains or the Kate Spades. You know, like they're thinking of like, you know, like the Eeyore types are just like mopey and like, I don't want to go anywhere, I don't want to do anything, and that's what they expect. And it's like, no, there's a difference between being sad and being depressed.
Yeah.
Like.
And that's one thing I can relate to, because I have been depressed in my past, and it was a process.
Preach it.
For me to get out of that, you know, and so I understand depression, and yeah, it's not being mopey and sad. It's serious.
Going to work. Yeah, it's going to work. It's walking your dog. It's playing, you know, playing baseball with your kids. You know, mostly because we have to. Because if I really, like, seriously, if I really sat and just like, and I do have these days, like the just bad mental health day where like I don't want to get out of bed, but I have to have them, like, I can't have them all the time, because like I said, I have a house to run, I have a husband, and I have pets, and I have a job and a life and bills and blah blah blah. So I can't let everything that makes me depressed just you know, tear me down to the point where I'm non-functional. I have to function. I function because I have to.
Didn't Messenger nail it when he said it's a lack of hope for the future?
Yes. I'm not, and I heard somebody say, I heard a quote, and it's a good one, that for people, I guess, like us or me or whatever, that we don't have to be hopeful about the future. We just need to be at least curious about it. And to be honest with you, right now, I'm not hopeful about my future, but I'm curious about it. Like I said, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm curious about where my D&D story is going to go with our characters, and I'm curious about. I watch Critical Role. I'm curious about where Critical Role is going, and you know, I'm curious about, you know, Dragon Con is coming up in September in Atlanta. I'm curious about what I'm going to do at Dragon Con. You know, like it's not, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but I don't have like a hope, you know, but I have a curiosity, and that and my, honestly, it's going to sound lame, but that and my pets are really what's keeping me around.
Again, I'm glad you have cats and curiosity.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of fall on the opposite end of that spectrum. Like even when I got depressed, I never got suicidal, because I've always seen, I've always had really big dreams, right? I've always had really big ambitions. Damn, I'm usually waking up at 7:30. I got really big ambitions, and so I've always been the type, and people think I'm crazy when I say this stuff. But like what the doctor you was talking about, Athena, I've actually studied some of his work, and I find it fascinating. I have hope for his work, because I am the type of person that would want to live for 1,000 years.
Me too. So, you know,
I would want to live until I don't want to live no more. And in that situation, I'm off. Like if you're gonna live forever, you got to be able to off yourself at some point. You know.
Yeah, but see, that was my entire point. Like, you know, right now in our society, if somebody who's 80 years old, expresses that they want to die, they'll usually say, "Oh no, you know, you have too much to live for. Think of your family." So my question was, okay, so, you know, say we find a way to live 1,000 years, or, you know, like 10,000 years, and, you know, everybody does, you know, everything they wanted to do in life, and then they want to say, "Oh, I want to kill myself." Are people still going to say you have so much to live for? Like, you know what I mean? That was my entire argument.
Yeah, like I would love to be alive to be able to just go to another world or even just to go into space. Like I would love to live forever. Like
Honestly,
I could keep myself interested for 1,000 years.
yeah, I
No
know.
problem.
But see, but see, here is the thing, because because if like hold on, give me a sec. I have noticed a lot of people, whenever you talk about immortality, like, you know what I mean, they go ape shit. Like, if one of those things, if you live forever, you'll get bored. Oh, you may become a dictator. Oh, blah 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 blah. Oh, overpopulation, or oh, resources. I'm like, those arguments never work, because they're Aubrey D. Gray, like, he's done, I've read his book, like, Ending Aging. I'm reading it again now. He talks about the pro aging trance. You know what I mean? You've probably heard about that, right? If you read his book, where
I haven't read his
people.
book. I just followed some of his claims, and I just think it's interesting to think about it. Like, if we could actually do that, if we could reverse age
Well,
and
hold on. See, here's the thing, because the analogy he uses works fairly well. I mean, yeah, the human body is more complex than a car, but car, when you have when you have an old car, right? Like, it's rusted or whatever. What do some people do? They fix the car. And this is why we have some cars that still run after 100 years. So he had the idea of doing that, the same thing to people. You know what I mean? Because over time, damage accumulates in the body, and you have extra junk that develops there. This is why you age. You know what I mean? This is why you age, because the processes your body does, like, they're fairly well at repairing damage. And, like, are you shaking your head?
Yeah, well, that's true to some extent, but it's not true to some extent, and here's why. What we're talking about is deleterious buildup of mutations over life, and that's damage to the DNA itself. There's no repairing that. We just call it aging. I mean, you could take premium care of yourself forever. You're not going to live to 130.
well,
Right now, no, because okay,
right now,
there are.
but
No, because of sunlight, you're going to die.
Well, this scientist thinks that he's got a way to. He says one of the claims that I just saw him make was that there's a person alive on this world today that will live for 1,000 years.
No, hold on. We'll live to be 1,000.
Yeah, would live to be 1,000 years old.
He's talking about advancements in technology and science.
But, like, I don't know too much about him. I just like to think about that kind of thing, and it kind of gets me in trouble, because then I talk theories and I fight absolutes, and I'm like, holy crap, there goes Raging Atheist thinking people are going to be living for 1,000 years.
Well, this is way off topic, but the fact is that our ability to make vitamin D has been shut off some time ago. So we need sunlight, but sunlight has radiation that kills us.
Yeah, well, I'd have to find out about it, but yeah, we can get back on topic, because I didn't mean to get off of what Martha was addressing. I was just trying to make a point that I'm oh no, you're great, Richard. I think that I was trying to make like just a comparison. Like, I'm the opposite of it. Like, I find it interesting. Like, if it's possible, like, I have hope that it's possible. But, like, you're right. I have heard the argument that, what happens to us, aging is so many mutations over the course of our life.
Look into John C. Sanford's work, and you'll see all kinds of detail about it.
And like Athena pointed out in that article, like, this guy's research is highly contested, highly contested. Yeah.
I mean, that's selling the elixir of life that we just can't manage.
And that goes back to my original point. Yeah, like, if you're going to make claims, you better have a big proof.
Well, hold on. Here's here's a difference, and this is no offense to you, messenger, messenger, but here's the thing. He actually earned this PhD. He actually published stuff, and his work was actually reviewed. He said, his work was actually reviewed by
it's out there.
He knows his shit
for everybody to
okay?
see. Yeah, like I said, like this guy, yeah, he's not a dummy, but it is highly contested, and just thinking about it, like what Richard's pointing out, it does seem like an impossible thing. It seems like an impossible thing, but we've thought things were impossible before.
I'm hopeful because a lot of things that that were once thought
and that's what I'm saying.
Thought impossible. Dude, the Wright brothers. Okay, this is how crazy it is. The Wright brothers were able to create a flying machine, and they were farmers. They were farmers.
I studied them extensively.
Whereas they were professionals spending like millions of dollars who couldn't do this right. So, what?
Yeah.
Well, we continue to advance. There's nothing wrong with our advancement. The fact of the matter is the United Nations is pouring billions of dollars. I said billions with a B. Every year into laboratories around the world, trying to find a way to remove the microRNA blocker off the human genome, allowing the non-coding regions of protein coding to start actively coding. Now, if they do that, we're talking about extending stem cells made within an adult human being.
Okay,
from
no
just
offense.
5 parts of the body.
No offense, Richard. My bio, my field. Well, I have no field per se, but I'm not Dragnet level, biology. But it just seems like, what? I'm just gonna shut up.
Okay, so United Nations is investing a lot of money into doing that, and in 2016. Science Magazine came out with an article saying they should have that chemical combination found within the next 10 years.
Okay.
So what would that do? Like
Well, if we can make stem cells everywhere, we'd be like a loggerhead turtle. Something would have to like violently kill you. You would never die of old age.
Yeah, so I would totally be down for that.
So this doctor guy, I kind of agree with him. The research shows that's possible. But I don't know. I don't know his whole story, what he's saying. But if he's talking about just like great nutrition, that won't do it.
No.
It's actual science.
Yeah, he was talking about. Excuse me. He was talking about like finding a way to like clean, because there are there is a lot of junk that accumulates within the cell and outside the cell, intracellular and extracellular, like that. Then there's but the bottom line is I'm not a biologist.
You seem like a smart guy, just the same.
Yeah,
well, thanks.
He's a smart dude. I'm not all that familiar. Like I just started hearing about this guy recently, and it was funny that you had written about him, because I just saw the whole his statement about the person being alive that's going to live to be 1,000 years old. I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, and what we thought was impossible before has become possible. Our technology is advancing at insane rates. I hope I'm alive to make that choice. Like I want to live forever.
If I can drag everyone I love with me, I'll do it.
Well, now, see, this is one of the reasons I heard, this is one of the arguments I've heard against immortality. I personally wouldn't want to live forever because all my friends, it would be sad to see all my friends and family die. And again, that didn't really hold water for me, because as long as you're alive, you will always remember those people.
Yeah, and hopefully, like it would. Hopefully, like every human would be able to be immortal, right? but then we'd have to think about reproduction. We definitely like wouldn't want to be immortal just stuck here on Earth without other planets to go to because we're gonna overpopulate it, you know.
You nailed it, bro. That's the problem.
Well, it's not really a nail because it's fairly obvious. Like, no offense to you, Raging, but you know that is one of the things we have to consider. Obviously, overpopulation and okay, are you laughing and just?
I was just thinking about something else. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just thinking about something else. Don't take offense.
Sorry, it's just
no offense intended.
But I've taken up enough of the time. To have fun.
Yeah, you did. Look at that. Came in here, dominated the whole damn conversation, Athena. What the fuck? Told you not to let him in here, Raging.
Hey, yeah. I like Athena. Athena's good people.
Yeah, he is. And he actually had a conversation and hosted a live stream on Wednesday, and I actually had a much better conversation than what we had on Saturday.
I'll have to go back and check that out. Like I've been missing his live streams. Usually I'll wake up and I'll catch it and I'll just jump in, which I shouldn't do because I'm like I'm not a logical human being when I first wake up at all. But
this is actually a conversation.
This has been a good conversation. Like this is what I wanted to talk about. But you know, we're about. I don't know, 8:30 will cut off. You know, I wanted to talk about the mental health aspect, and I think we did. And I wanted to talk about suicide. The conversation turned into a really good part because I get people laugh at me when I tell them that I would live forever. Like they're like, "What's wrong with you?" type shit, and I'm like, "You wouldn't."
Oh, no.
I would be curious about. Not hopeful. You'd be curious to see what happened. What everything be like in 1,000 years or so.
Yeah, another argument. Another argument people made against immortality or extending life. What if like 10,000 years from now you become a dictator?
Oh yeah.
That's 10,000 years from now. Another dictator. Honestly, a lot of people just really don't understand what the fuck it even means to be a dictator because dictators are usually born, born in countries that are just really poor, third world or second world, but there are some dictators who come from first world. I guess you could say Hitler was born in a first world country. Napoleon was also born in a first world country. You know what I mean? Just it's nuts. It's that's some of the arguments people have come up over the and here's the thing. Suicide, immortality, like suicide, has been has been stigmatized, and I really love how the messenger's laughing at me.
No, not you. I was laughing at.
I know. I'm just.
Messenger. Atheist Rationale has been going back and forth.
Reese said dictator, and she did like a
like the butthead.
Yeah. No.
You're all insane.
The dictator thing, like with Hitler especially. Well, here's the thing that. This is kind of funny that I laugh at all the time when people on the right call people on the left Nazis. Like you literally have to.
Isn't that usually the other way around?
Yeah, you literally have to be on the right wing to be a Nazi because it's right wing ideology, and yet I'm seeing it more and more. Like right wing people are calling left wing people Nazis, and I just giggle. I just laugh.
I thought they were calling you guys NPCs.
Yeah, I've gotten that a lot. I'm an NPC to quite a few people.
An NPC?
Yeah.
Like a non-player character?
Yes, the meme is like the meme.
Yeah, that's what the right calls leftists, the NPCs. But no, I've been seeing it more and more. Like you're a Nazi, and I'm like, dude, you don't understand what fascist is, do you? Like fascist is literally, extreme far right. You can't be extreme far left and be a Nazi. You just can't. Yeah.
So did you want to touch on substance abuse before we get further into this?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we never even got to the substance abuse part because that's something that I'm very familiar with.
That was how you and I first started talking.
Yeah. That was like the main topic.
I said, "Hey, you want me to come in and talk about this?" And then we talked about everything but that.
Yeah. That was supposed to be the main topic, and yes, I do want to talk about that because this is something that I am very knowledgeable about. It's almost a field I went into, and I did.
A practitioner of using those things, right?
Well, not only that, but I've been through several rehabs, so I've been through several rehabilitation treatments. I was a poly addict, so I was addicted to 3 or more different drug families, and it took 5 different rehabs for me to get clean, and I still never successfully got clean because I just substitute, alcohol and weed. Sedative hypnotic was one of the drug families I was addicted to. So, yeah, like addiction to me is a sign of mental illness. It's a sign of inner weakness. Like for me personally, like I always say, like when I drink, I'm usually most often, dealing with emotional pain, and that's my way to deal with it. So that's why I do it. But yeah, I'm really interested in addiction because I think that addiction isn't, and maybe I'm wrong, but it isn't like it was when I was growing up. Like we were kids being rebellious, against our parents, going out smoking weed, and eventually some went on to do other stuff. I went on to my whole psychedelic thing and got into psychedelics. But now I think it's more along the lines like kids are just being prescribed all these drugs and they're growing up taking drugs, and to me, like it seems like a totally different thing now.
Could I say something about the PTSD prior topic? Just something I noticed during the that whole fiasco that happened before. It's so funny to me. It's ironic, really, that we're talking about skeptics who have PTSD. Now, by definition, that means that they're highly observant and highly aware of their surroundings and very, very suspicious. So I'm wondering how an intelligent, suspicious person gets taken advantage of by someone who has good intent for them. What I mean by that is, why don't they try? Even if something seems completely new, it seems like they'd be the hardest person to take advantage of. And I just wanted to point that out. Guys, have a great night. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk. And if you want to just cut me off, so I don't even know how to do that. I would say good night to you all.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Email us anytime. Have peace.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Richard. We'll talk to you later.
Us? Wait, what do you mean us? Isn't there only you?
No.
Oh, there he went. Sorry, Richard.
Wait, did you
like there he went, like I booted him?
Yeah, he told me to kick him. I'm like, you're out of here.
I wanted to.
Here's the thing, though. Let me speak real quick on what he just talked about. If any of these people who have been so skeptical and asking, where's the peer-reviewed articles, where's the peer-reviewed research, if you would have been assigned to me because you came in for therapy for dealing with your PTSD, those questions would never come up. You didn't scrutinize your counselor or your therapist, ask them for peer-reviewed articles, what treatment methods we were looking like. How many of you actually saw your service plans or your treatment plans? How many of you actually asked what school of thought or what type of therapy you would be having done with you in therapy?
Well, I ask questions. I don't have PTSD, but I ask questions. Like I do have a therapist. I'm going on Tuesday, and I challenge him on stuff.
What diagnoses have you given me? I mean, most clinical client relationships, and we discussed this heavily when I was in school.
I mean, the only diagnosis I have is adjustment disorder, where I don't have the best coping mechanisms, in the sense that there are some things that make me lose my shit, so to speak. I have gotten better from breathing, you know what I mean? But that's basically what I was diagnosed with. That's it. It's the thing is around here somewhere, but that's adjustment disorder. That's about it. It's not even. It's manageable. You know what I mean? I'm trying to lose weight, get rid of anxiety, trying to breathe. It's everything. Everything's good. Everything's fine.
I would encourage every single person who's going to therapy or planning to go to therapy to specifically look at your service plan, to specifically look at your diagnoses and better understand those things and become experts as part of your treatment. And I think that there's a lot of clinical therapists out there, and I saw it when I was in school. I saw it in personal life before I was ever in school, to where they never discussed what my diagnosis was. They never discussed what my treatment plan was. They never discussed,
Well, okay, I have to disagree with you there, because the therapist I have does do that.
I just said I, and I related it to my personal experience, so I wasn't speaking to yours.
Okay, fair enough, but it just seems like all right, fair enough.
Yeah, I haven't paid attention to what's gone on in the chat. Like, I'm notoriously bad. Like, for some reason I can't read the chat and pay attention to the conversation, so I end up ignoring the chat. But I have seen like back and forth, and yeah, this thing is going to keep going on, I think.
Like, what are they even talking about?
Well, I get the point. Like I said, like, I like me and Messenger are cool. We're going to remain to be cool. But like, I get their point. Like, I have an issue with the wording. Like, to me personally, like, I'm a skeptic. Like, I need proof that you got proof, that you got a cure. But I'm not seeing all the back and forth that's going on. Notice me, senpai. Notice you for what? What did I miss?
Because they're just saying they want to be noticed. Like, hello, say hello.
What's up, Reese? Yeah, I'm really bad at looking at the chat, so I have no idea what's been going on in the chat. I do know I see the atheist rationale, and your discussion is going to be very, very interesting. But yeah,
it's going to be a dumpster fire. Just admit it.
Yeah, it's going to be a dumpster fire. But
it already is.
I think that you know what you're talking about. Like, I know several people have asked me, and I meant to ask this earlier when we were talking about it. You probably just saw Atheist Rationale. People want to know your schooling, what school you went to, your credentials. It was several emails I got. Wanted to know that. You don't have to speak to that. You can if you want to, Messenger. But like, I think that they're just wanting to. All right, you say you have a cure.
But here's the thing. You realize that every question they ask, they're just looking for a chink in the armor. They're just looking for the one little steel man they can do to sit there and make everything else crumble around it. They're not real curious. They're not like, hey, I'm just curious about this. They're looking to debunk. So I'm almost tired of answering those steel man bullshit questions.
I mean,
because here's the thing. The school, I'm not done. Listen, I'm not done talking. Don't interrupt. I went to a K-CREP accredited school in a K-CREP accredited program. And if you don't know what K-CREP is, then you shouldn't even be asking the question about the credentials because you don't understand them.
Wow.
So shake your heads all you want. That's the truth. You don't even know what K-CREP is. Why don't you know what that is?
Right, I don't know what that is, but I do know that you think that you know everything and you don't. You don't know everything about anxiety.
Well, that's exactly why I went to school, was to learn everything about anxiety.
So you're saying that you can cure me. That's what you're saying?
I'm saying that I can help your mind reorient and you will heal you. It won't be me. It'll be you. You'll be the expert.
What proof do you have?
Previous clients that I worked with, myself individually, my family and friends that I've worked with. So
I'm sorry. I hate to be coming at you nasty, but I don't like it when people just say blanket statements. Like, there is no cure. The only thing I can do, and I said this last night when Nakasuchi let me on the stream, was I can manage my PTSD. I can't get rid of it. I've asked my psychiatrist, my previous psychiatrist, and my therapist. You can only manage it. You cannot ever get rid of it. Like, the trauma lives in your body. It lives in your cells. Your body remembers it. Like, you're never going to get rid of that. That's my whole point. And it makes me mad that you're saying that, oh, we can cure it. We can cure it. No, you can't.
According to them, you can't cure it. But you can't say, no, you can't. You're just saying that my therapist that I've had, and you mentioned 2 psychiatrists. I don't know if you were differentiating your therapist from your 2 psychiatrists or not. You're saying that everybody that you've worked with professionally has told you that you can't be cured of it. You can only learn to cope or manage the symptoms of it.
Right.
And
I've talked to many people.
And you also told me that you were diagnosed in the moderated or the comments that you were diagnosed with complex PTSD. And I responded to you and I said that complex PTSD is not a DSM-5 diagnosis. And so I was skeptical because you used the word complex PTSD because it was offered in both the DSM-4 and DSM-5, and it got rejected by the American Psychiatric Association as a diagnosis.
But that is a real diagnosis, though. That's what I've been diagnosed with.
It isn't a real diagnosis. I can pull out my DSM-5 right now and show you on the pages what PTSD diagnosis is. And I can show you the codes that they use for it. The reason that CPTSD was rejected is because it was too ambiguous for the people who were offering it up as a specific diagnosis to differentiate it from PTSD. And that in reality, there's more...
Tragic event. It's one tragic event. I had many tragic events. Yes, it is. PTSD is one event that causes all the mayhem in your body.
Do you want me to read you the DSM-5 diagnoses and the criteria for it?
Hang on. I actually pulled something up if I can contribute.
Yeah, please, Athena.
I mean, we're having a back and forth conversation, and I have a DSM-5 sitting right next to me that I brought just in case people had an issue with diagnoses. Where I can read it directly out of the DSM-5.
Hang on.
No, read it. No, read it to me.
Wait, me or him?
No, I'm talking to Messenger. Read the DSM-5. I don't even know what that means.
So this is the DSM. This is what we use to sit there and diagnose mental disorders. Okay?
Okay.
And then before this, I can go get it off my shelf, but I have the DSM-4 TR that we don't use anymore that was discontinued when this was approved as the 5th edition. And before that, there was a 3rd edition, there was a 2nd edition, and a 1st edition. So these are the books that we use for diagnoses, not treatment, okay? Just diagnoses in clinical mental health. And the psychiatrists use this, the psychologists use this, intake specialists use this, clinical social workers.
I have something, that believe it or not, is to your point.
Are you saying, well, it doesn't matter to whose point. I just wanted to have a back and forth with her and try to keep it somewhat amicable because I don't have a problem with Lady Tasha. I just disagreed with something that she said. That's all.
Well, wait, whoa. What's the issue?
No, I told you. I said that complex PTSD is not a diagnosis. That's all.
Okay.
So give me 1 second, okay?
All right. Yeah, I'm waiting.
Everybody wants to come in.
No, do not open up a dumpster fire, Rage. This is important. I want an amicable conversation with Tasha.
Yeah, we're gonna let Tasha and Messenger do their thing, and we're cutting this off at 8:30, guys, because my daughter wants to eat.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so give me a second to get to that specific diagnosis on page 271.
Okay.
So get over there. Okay, this is the diagnostic criteria. So in the beginning, for every single disorder that's listed in the DSM-5, it has a diagnostic criteria. And if you do not meet all the conditions of it, then you have features of it, but it's not the diagnosis itself. Second part of it is it goes into the diagnostic features, which I'm not going to read because that's usually a few pages. Then it goes into associated features supporting the diagnosis, the prevalence, which is like the statistics throughout the United States. They talk about development in course, which means what are the onsets of it, and that's like academic. Then it gets into risk and prognosis factors. Okay, and I'm not lecturing you. I just want to let you know what this has in it.
I'm open.
It has cultural related diagnostic issues, gender related diagnostic issues, suicide risk, function consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder, and then they also have differential diagnoses. And when they talk about the sections with differential diagnoses, it's like, why are we choosing this diagnosis for the client as opposed to all these other ones that are similar? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so that completes it. And then the last part, it gets into comorbidity. And what comorbidity means is, what is this diagnosis usually linked with in terms of a client having multiple diagnoses? Like if they're suffering from this, what are other ones that are very similar that they're probably also experiencing as well? So that like if you had a client that came in and they met the criteria for a specific diagnosis, and they don't want you just to get right in and focus on that diagnosis. They want you to do further assessment to see if there's a comorbid diagnosis so that the client gets the proper treatment. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I said when they ruled out complex PTSD, when it was presented by the individuals who were trying to get it approved as a diagnosis, when it got rejected, the reason that they ruled it out was because it was too ambiguous, and it was interfering with the comorbidity aspect of it, to where you're sitting there trying to understand other things that are related with it. So I'll continue with reading the diagnostic criteria if you didn't have any questions.
Well, I don't understand then what do I like? Then the millions of us who've been
I think you have
what do we do?
I think you have I think you have PTSD, and things also get rated in terms of whether they're mild, moderate, or severe symptoms. So almost with every disorder, like you'll sit there and put the diagnostic code, the diagnostic wording, and then you'll have a comma, mild, severe, moderate. Or like when Athena said he had adjustment disorder, usually we have adjustment disorder with depression, or adjustment disorder with anxiety, or adjustment disorder mixed episodes.
Okay.
So there's always those little tiny features of it, and they get into those things in the DSM so that we can properly diagnose this as clinical clinicians. So getting into this, the opening note says the following criteria applies to adults, adolescents, and children older than 6 years. For children 6 years and younger, see corresponding criteria, which is after this.
Okay.
Here is A, which means you have to meet A first before you can even go to B, C, D, E, and F. So we'll talk about A. A, it says exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in one or more of the following ways: directly experiencing the traumatic events, witnessing in person the events as it occurs to others, learning that the trauma event occurred to a close family member or close friend. In cases of actual or threatened death of a family member or friend, the event must have been violent or accidental. Experiencing, number 4 is experiencing related or extreme exposure to adverse details of the traumatic event. Example, first responders collecting human remains, police officers repeatedly exposed to details of child abuse. And it says, note, criterion A4 does not apply to exposure through electronic media, television, movies, or pictures unless this exposure is work-related. So again, they're making sure that the clear diagnosis that one or more of those first 4 that we listed were ways that trauma was experienced. Then
wait, hold on. So you're saying the person has had to have witnessed it? What about the person experiencing it?
Well, that was number 1. When we did A, it said directly experience the traumatic events.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that.
And then B went to witness, or the number 2 went to witnessing in person. Okay. And then 3 was just learning about it. So it was either it happened to me, I witnessed it happening, or I heard about it happening to a close family member or close friend.
Okay.
So those were the first 3, and then the 4th one said experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to adverse details of the events. So it's like being talked about it over and over and over, or hearing about those things, and that can create trauma. We see that with parents and children. Like parents get abused, or they get neglected, or they get stuff, and they share those details with their children, and their children develop symptomology and actual PTSD disorder, and have to be treated for it because the parents are sharing information with children who shouldn't hear it.
Oh, so I didn't know if that was even a thing.
Yeah. So
now you guys gonna be around later after the stream ends, so we can continue on mine channel.
Are you talking to who are you talking to, Athena?
Everybody.
I have to as soon as we're done on this one, I need to check in with the wife. I hear my baby's crying and I want to help out with that. So if I'm available, I'll definitely make time, but I can't promise anything right now.
Well, no, that's fine. You know, just wanted to see if everyone else, if no one's gonna come, that's fine.
Sorry, it's just dependent. I mean,
yeah. I'm at work right now. I actually have to leave. I have to leave actually at 8:30 when we're done. So I have to walk.
That's fine. Then doesn't matter.
I stuck later. I wanted to quickly come in and talk to Messenger.
Yeah, okay. I think that there's legitimate gripes, and I don't think it's going to be solved.
Not tonight. It's not. And then so let's go on to B. After a person has met one of the 4 criteria for A, one or more, then it goes on to B. It says presence of one or more of the following intrusive symptoms associated with the traumatic event, beginning after the traumatic event occurred. Number 1, it's recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressing memories of the traumatic event. 2, number 2, remember it's one or more. Recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and or effect of the dream are related to the traumatic event. Number 3, dissociative reactions, which are flashbacks, in which the individual feels or acts as if the traumatic event were reoccurring in present.
Yeah.
And then number 4, intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. That could be like triggers.
Right.
Number 5, marked physiological reactions to internal or external cues. The cues are the triggers that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. So it's just those last 2 are reminders of those things. So now we know the stuff happened. Now we're experiencing more. We're either reflecting or ruminating in those things, or they're getting triggered because of things that are similar in our environment.
Right.
Then it goes on to criteria C. Persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the traumatic events, beginning after the traumatic event occurred, as evidenced by one or both of the following. Number 1, avoidance of or efforts to avoid distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings about or closely associated with the traumatic event. Or number 2, avoidance of or efforts to avoid external reminders, people, places, conversations, activities, objects, situations that arouse distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings about or closely associated with the traumatic event. So again, people in general don't want to discuss those things because they're so impactful when they're occurring, when they get re-triggered. And I especially saw this. I didn't see it as much with people that I worked with coming out of prison so much as I did people coming out of war.
Okay.
I'm just telling you my personal experience. That's all I was sharing, not like a clinical. So then we get down.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Then we get down to D. Negative alterations in cognitions and mood associated with the traumatic event, beginning or worsening after the traumatic event occurred, as evidenced by 2 or more of the following. Inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, typically due to dissociative amnesia and not other factors such as head injury, alcohol, or drugs. Persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs or expectations about oneself, others, or the world. Example, people say, I am bad, no one can be trusted, the world is completely dangerous, my whole nervous system is permanently ruined. Persistent distorted cognitions about the cause or consequences of the traumatic event that lead the individual to blame himself or others. Persistent negative emotional state, example, horror, fear, anger, guilt, or shame. Markedly diminished interest in or participation in significant activities or activities that are important to that person. Feelings of detachment or estrangement from others. Persistent inability or experience positive emotions, which means they have an inability to feel like pleasure or joy or happiness or that.
Right.
Inability to experience happiness, satisfaction, or loving feelings. And again, you don't have to meet all of these. It's 1 or more of the following. So we listed 7 things. Then it goes on to E. Marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with the traumatic event, beginning or worsening after the traumatic event has occurred, as evidenced by 2 or more of the following. Number 1, irritable behavior and angry outbursts with little or no provocation, typically expressed as verbal or physical aggression toward people or objects. Number 2, reckless or self-destructive behavior. Number 3, hypervigilance. Number 4, exaggerated startle response. Number 5, problems with concentration. Number 6 would be sleep disturbance, difficulty falling or staying asleep, racing thoughts, or restless sleep. Like you just can't get comfortable or restful sleep. Then it says F, which is one of the most important ones for PTSD as opposed to acute stress disorder. It says the duration of the disturbance, which means that the stuff that's going on in B, C, D, and E is lasting more than a month. Okay. Then we go into G. It says the disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and or other areas of functioning. And then H, which is the final one, it says the disturbance is not attributed to the physiological effects of substance. Example, if people are self-medicating, alcohol, or other medical conditions. And again, that's just the criteria to be diagnosed with it. If they do not meet all of those, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, then it's PTSD features or symptoms, and then you're looking for a more specific diagnostic. Are they dealing with major depressive disorder? Are they dealing with bipolar disorder? Are they dealing with GAD, which is generalized anxiety disorder. So there's other things that may be a more prevalent diagnosis for somebody, even if they don't meet all the criteria, they still have features of it. You still have to treat the symptoms. So when a clinician's looking at those things, when they're building a service plan, they're building the service plan specific to the specific symptoms of that client. So if a clinician's treating PTSD for 10 people, that treatment plan is going to be very specific and different for each of those 10 people, because nobody meets all the same things. Nobody experiences, like we had soldiers come back from the same war, same group, same company, saw the same events, and they have different features because they're unique individuals. There's no carbon copy human beings on this planet. Even identical twins have a very different worldview or different way of processing the informational world around them.
Okay.
So the research we did on PTSD said if you eliminate the symptoms, which is the major one being stress, okay, it's an increased level of stress to the point where all these things that we discussed are occurring and contributing to that stress, so that you're not getting a break. You're not getting a moment of peace. You're not getting a moment of, hey, you know what, I can go a few days and just enjoy life. It's repeatedly and ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. So even if you isolated yourself and said, I'm avoiding all triggers in the world, it could be a memory, it could be a dream, it could be anything, a television show. You know, you're watching something on television, it reminds you, or you have a conversation with somebody and it triggers a memory of those things. So with the whole purpose of it is how do you process through and how do you address the individual symptoms, not only from your own feelings of those things, but some of the thoughts and judgments and perspectives that you hold towards those judgments or towards those events. And what we found is when you reorient the way that somebody views their trauma, views themselves within the trauma, and you get to a position to where they're not feeling stressed because of it, but they're just processing through it objectively and not subjectively, then they have a healthy lens for how they're viewing themselves and others. Because I always told clients, you know, when they would come in and say, you know, when I think about this, this happens, they think about this happens. I'm like, one of the things that you have to do initially, and this was in treatment, not for what I do outside of treatment, like on my YouTube channel or in Zoom, is first off, you got to stop. You got to do your best not to ruminate, and you have to do your best not to put yourself in positions of triggers, which means redirecting your attention to activities that are both pleasurable and enjoyable. And I'm sure that's one of the things and strategies and coping mechanisms that therapy taught is engaging in situations with people and activities that are enjoyable and pleasurable, so that you're not always in that constant state of stress. So you're giving yourself a break from it. But because I always tell people, like, if you, like, part of your trauma is that it happened, and part of your trauma is because of how your ability to process it or not process it based on the previous skills and beliefs and values and morals and ethics that were given to you as a child or an adolescent. Because like I said, we send people over to war and they come back and they have very different views and very different perspectives and very different ways of coping with it. They have a different level of resilience because one person grew up in this type of environment and was given the skills, and this other person wasn't given the skills. And we see that all throughout society. But we know that when we give people new skills that they didn't previously have, they have a better way of functioning and a better level of well-being within their personal self. It's like building your self-esteem, building your sense of self-worth, building your sense of self-confidence.
Right.
So like I said, is like once people reorient and then the stress reduces or is eliminated, which is the goal, and then anxiety is eliminated or is gone, depression is eliminated and or is gone, anger or rage is eliminated and or gone, then your biology of your brain has a chance to relax. Because if it's always in a constant state of one of those intense emotions, it's affecting everything. It's affecting your chemical makeup of your brain. It's changing the way that your brain is physically. But we found, and this is out there where you can go do research on PTSD, once the symptomology of those intense emotions is eliminated or greatly reduced, the brain begins to heal. It begins to reorient back to a healthier state of being. And you can go read this in peer-reviewed journal articles already out there for the research they've done on PTSD. All I've said is, I know and believe, based on what I researched and what I've been doing the last 13 and a half years, is I have a more effective way than what I studied in school and what I put into practice than what I've seen in my peer group and or professionals that I've worked with as a client when I was in therapy.
We got about 14 minutes. I hear your kids are crying, Messenger, and my kid is wanting me to cook. But
so see if Tasha has any like closing question. And Tasha, you can email me if you want to have offline conversations.
Before Athena left, I don't know if you guys see group chat, but like with Tasha's diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, he linked an article from Medical News today, and it says complex post-traumatic stress disorder is closely related to post-traumatic stress disorder. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5, a handbook often used by psychiatrists and psychologists, does not currently acknowledge complex post-traumatic stress disorder as a separate condition. Some doctors will, however, diagnose it. PTSD is an anxiety, but a doctor may diagnose complex PTSD if a person has experienced prolonged or repeated trauma over a period of months or years. So I just wanted to put that out there, like that it does appear that complex diagnosis or complex PTSD does appear to be a diagnosis that people do receive.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say, Messenger, is like that's what I was diagnosed with. I know other people that have been diagnosed with the same thing. Like if it's not a diagnosis, then why are people still diagnosing people with that? Like
because it's a term that got brought up the last two times they tried to revise the DSM, which was the DSM-4 TR. And also the DSM-5. And when people talked about symptoms and they talked about syndromes, they use the term syndrome, like this syndrome. There's no syndromes in the DSM, but people commonly use those syndromes because there's professionals in the field who are licensed that want to get these diagnoses out there based on research they've done. But when they take it to their peers, it's being rejected for significant reasons that are outlined when they say this isn't going in for these reasons. Like go out there and read, why did complex post-traumatic stress disorder not get accepted by the APA? And it doesn't mean that you don't have severe features and that it's not long and ongoing. I just said it's not a diagnostic feature. It's not a diagnostic diagnosable thing from the DSM. And that is the quote Bible for mental health. That's the codes they have to use in the system. That's the codes that have to be like if you go look at your assessment, diagnosis, and treatment plan in your records, you would not see complex post-traumatic stress disorder under your diagnosis. They can't because they couldn't be entered into any health record system.
All right. I kind of find this a bit funny. Like, I know nothing about this stuff, and this is somehow landed on my channel. but this is, so like I'm sure some people are like, well, why isn't he, going at Messenger? Like, I truly don't understand this stuff well enough to try to go at anybody about this. I think it's going to be interesting to see the conversation between Atheist Rationale and Messenger, because to where Atheist Rationale isn't, a psychologist like Messenger is. I'm
not a psychologist.
Or I'm sorry. Whatever. Atheist Rationale has PTSD, and he seems very knowledgeable about it. It does seem like it's probably going to be a dumpster fire, and I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be at least, Atheist Rationale will be able to provide knowledgeable debate with you on this subject, where I'm just kind of like, man, I don't know half of what he just said.
See, and here's the thing. I hope you understand. I don't reject what you were told. Do you understand that?
Yes.
I'm not rejecting what you were told. I don't understand why you were told that. It doesn't, as a clinical practitioner, it doesn't make sense to me why they would use that terminology when they know it's not part of diagnoses.
Okay.
Like whatever you're dealing with and whatever symptoms you're dealing with, I do not doubt that they're real. I do not doubt that you're suffering from those things, that they've impacted your life. That wasn't my point. My point was like, why is your therapist telling you this, and why are they telling you that you're always going to suffer from this? I've never used that language ever with any client I ever worked with. I was there to instill hope and give them that things are going to get better and things are going to be better because you're going to become the expert for your life, and let me show you how to do that.
Okay. I don't think that was the intention, though. I think most people are told, you can manage it. Like I don't think anyone goes out to say that. So I'm sorry if I came at you attacking.
No,
I just wanted you to understand. Sorry, I get emotional sometimes, so I just want to apologize. I didn't mean to come at you like bitchy.
No. I don't take any offense. I don't take any offense. Please trust me when I tell you, I do not take any offense.
Okay.
Like I said, a lot of times when people are communicating, people make assumptions based on certain words or certain things that are said. Like when I use the word cure over their channel, people lost their minds, and I explained with the Raging Atheist earlier why I thought that was like when especially I've seen it in the Christian community, which I think is such bullshit and unhealthy, is when they're like, oh yeah, we can cure your homosexuality, we can cure your lesbianism, we can cure your things, and I'm like, what a horrible thing to say to a human being ever.
Yeah.
And so when I sit there and say that PTSD as a symptomology can be cured, that's different than saying, you know what, Tasha, you need cured. Like in terms of like there's something wrong with you. No, there's stuff that happened to you that's creating unhealthy processing and unhealthy feeling that's impacting the way that you live and enjoy life in this world. And I want that to be different for people. And I didn't want to see people be locked in saying, oh, I'm always going to suffer from this. I'm always going to have these symptoms. I'm always going to have to deal with this shit. And I'm like, no, because I've worked with people that are free from that. I'm free from things that I used to suffer from.
Okay.
And I don't sit there and say, and then people
have to go because I have to walk the rest of the dogs because I'm at work and I have to walk them for the night. But thanks for having me on, Nakasuchi. I appreciate it. And John, I'll get back to you. I'll check with you sometime this weekend. If you want to have a conversation, Nakasuchi, about witchcraft, email me and we'll set that up.
Awesome.
Good night, you guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, Marty.
Night. All right. Bye-bye.
So, yeah, I mean, this has been an interesting conversation. And it's a continuously evolving conversation. We can't seem to escape it. But this is good. I like I said, man, I want people to be free of PTSD. I think it's
And Knock,
yes, I do understand that mistake, Pluto. Guzman isn't coming back on ever.
And Knock, I'd like to have a conversation with you privately sometime about some of the things that you say. Hey, I'm still self-medicating for this and this and this, and I know what it's about. And I would like to have that private conversation because because you don't look at me as somebody being disingenuous. And I would be curious after we have a conversation about things and I share some of my worldviews and my viewpoints, not from a religious standpoint, but from my understanding about human behavior. And then you come back on your channel and tell these people what I've shared, or Tasha come back on if she's willing to have a private conversation, or Reese C, or other people who have emailed me that I'm not going to mention because they didn't come out publicly and say it. But there's been several people who are like, hey, I'm willing to have a conversation. I'm willing to talk about this because I'm tired of suffering from it.
Yeah, I'm an open book. Yeah, I'll have a private conversation with you about the shit that goes on with me. And
again, I'm not people's therapist. I'm somebody saying, hey, here's how you can become the expert for your life. Here's how you can learn to partner with your destiny, as I call it, by looking at yourself on the inside of what are the things that go on inside of me that determine how I act and behave, choose and decide and express and feel, and how can those things be healthier and better for me? That's what I do, and that's it. And it's not from a theological standpoint like these ignorant asses in your chat keep saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll admit, I think I jumped on that bandwagon too. So I apologize. And like I said last night, I'm always open. Like, I'm willing to be open-minded. Like, I'm trying to be more open-minded. So I'm sorry. I was definitely ignorant as well.
Well, I believe you were one, because of our conversation in the comments, were taken back thinking I wasn't taking what you were saying serious. And so I apologize if I didn't articulate myself properly, or I guess you use better words when we were having the back and forth comments. I apologize for that aspect. That's a responsibility on my part.
Being combative when I need to work on listening more and being less combative. So I apologize for that as well.
Well, yeah, and I good conversation. We'll continue it again once Atheist Rationale comes on. We'll figure that out.
Do you have my email address, Tasha?
No, I don't think so.
I'll type it in the chat, or can you see the side chat for Zoom?
No, I can't see the side chat. Can you type it in and then I can write it down?
Yeah. It's just the messenger reveals at gmail.com.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I do want to say before we get out of here that we've had a lot of people come in to chat. One might have been trolling, talking about feeling suicidal, that kind of thing. I would highly stress that any of you guys don't come to the Raging Atheist for advice on that shit. Don't come to anybody, you know, in the chat. Go seek professional help.
100%. Yeah, don't discontinue.
Yeah.
So, especially if you're prescribed medication. And I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying even if a person's prescribed medication, definitely do not discontinue therapy or treatment.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying but I tell people all the time is like, if it's not working for you or getting better, then also seek alternate treatment. There's thousands of therapists with thousands of different schools of approach and way they do things. And you may find somebody that's more effective.
Yeah, I definitely
totally down with that too. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, it sounds like you need to get off. I need to go cook dinner. And guys, I'm not going to have an open stream tonight. Like I said earlier, if you didn't catch it, I'm going to be watching a movie with my daughter, taking a night off, spending time with her, and going to bed instead of being up for 6-7 hours talking to you guys tonight. So, it's been a good conversation. I enjoyed it, and it's going to be continued. I'll email you and Atheist Rationale, and we'll get that thing going.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me on, Nakasuchi, and it was nice chatting with you, Messenger. Thank you.
Tasha, you take care.
Right.
Thank you. You too.
See you guys later.